Hey everybody, my name is Anndee King. I'm the host of the Magnetic Guide podcast, and I'm going to be introducing you to my friend and colleague, April Doyle. She is a fellow biohacker and health enthusiast. She started her health journey in April of 2021. So April of 2021, and has lost over 40 pounds, 50 inches. And she just keeps getting better each day. And we wanted to talk about fasting, and it's all the rage right now. Like, I feel like people are talking about fasting all the time, and it's amazing. It's an amazing tool, but fasting really isn't accessible for everybody, depending on metabolic flexibility, depending on, a lot of different things. And fasting, in the kind of, I guess, the sense that everybody thinks of it as, is maybe not for everybody either, right? And so April and I, we fast, but we have, I don't want to say struggles, but we have some challenges that come up with fasting. And so we wanted to talk about those challenges, how fasting can become accessible for people, who fasting maybe it's for, who it isn't, how you can play around with it, and also to go over that there's not just one way to fast. It's not just like only drinking water for 4 days and you're starving yourself. There's many different reasons to fast, different ways to, different types of fasting that we can do. So I guess, April, I share a little bit about how you maybe came about fasting, or like, what's your story with it? How did you get started? Tell me all of it.
Well, I mean, my initial foray into fasting actually started about 2 years ago now, where it was suggested to me that I start looking into intermittent fasting. And so back then, and I was doing this with zero support. Like, it was just, don't eat till however long you can go, the next morning, sort of thing. And, when I first started that, I was, I now know I was extremely insulin resistant. My metabolic health was horrible, but at the time I didn't know any of this. I literally just was like, okay, I'll try it. Well, I couldn't even, just getting to, I get up at 5 a.m. every day. Getting till 7 a.m. was like, oh my God, like, I'm dying and I'm so hungry. And so I gradually, and it took me at that point, it just to get to 9 or 10 a.m. probably took me, oh my God, 6 to 8 months. And so, and then I kind of just stayed there. And then this year, 2021, and I didn't
sorry, how many hours fasted would that be for you?
So that would have been from about 6 o'clock at night till, so, we're talking 12 hours at first. Like, I had a real struggle doing 12 hours. But I knew nothing at that point about MCT oil. I literally, the only thing I did use at that point to get me through the morning was coffee and cream, like heavy cream. Like, at one point, I think I even used like 35% whipping cream, like at one point.
That's the only thing I use in my coffee. It's so good.
Well, so yeah, so that was it then. I mean, I love the keto cream. I love the MCT oil. Like, I do put that kind of stuff. And I gradually morphed into some of that. But at the beginning, it was just coffee and cream. But I would have, like, for me to get to even 10 a.m. If I managed to get to 10 a.m., like, I would have 2 large coffees. Like, it was a struggle. Like, it was not just as simple as get up in the morning and go about your routine, distract yourself, get a little exercise, all the stuff you hear about. And no, like, it was like coffee, give me more coffee and more cream. Like, so, but I did it. But it took me a long time. It was not easy. Even that beginning stuff was not a simple linear process for me. It was all over the place, right? Some days were easier than others. Weekends were easier than weekdays, depending on what I was doing. And then, so I kind of stayed there. I stuck with the 9, 10 a.m. And then this year, when I started getting serious about my health early on in the year, probably it was probably around March that I kept hearing about all this fasting and the longer fast, like, and it was so overwhelming to me because to me there didn't seem to be much in between at that stage in early 2021 from what I was seeing in the
Yeah,
Facebook
it was
groups
like
and stuff,
intermittent fasting
or
to
60
like 4
hours.
days, or
Yeah,
yeah, and you're
yeah.
like, what? I
So
can't
I
do
was like,
that.
there was like, no way, I will die. Like, it is not possible. It is just like, and so then at that point is when I did start taking ketones. So I thought, okay, and I'd been on the ketones for a couple months, and I watched you guys like doing the fasting and doing all that stuff. So I was like, by March, it really, for me, it was when when you guys started the 24-hour metabolic Mondays. That was a game changer for me, because that, at least, and it made it manageable for me. It got me over the head. I now know fasting is a mental game. It really isn't, I get physical symptoms, you get physical symptoms, huge, but it's a mental game. Like, it's yeah, and I didn't really realize that at all. It had never really occurred to me. So then once you guys started talking about the 24-hour fast, I thought, okay, this might be possible. Might. Like, I was still
So
a huge skeptic. And so I did that. I think it was March that I started that. And I mean, honestly, I don't think I lasted. I think I managed with support. So I definitely used the ketones. Um, I think that was all I was using then, though. I wasn't clued in as much about how important the electrolytes and the salt was at that point. I think that's where I kind of went wrong on some of my earlier fasts. But I think I managed to go 18 hours or something like that was the most I could do. But I did the weekly fast. So I
yeah.
kind of just tried. When I joined the group and I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. However far I get. It was not easy. Like, I honestly thought, like, every Monday I was like, I can do this. And then, but I made sure I had all this food just in case I might die. I might be sick. Like, I honestly was like, I am going, something's going to happen to me. This is not going to end well. And, but it took me at least that first month before I even managed to make it through a 24-hour fast. And it was
Yeah.
definitely not easy. Like,
No.
and I think it was April, or I think it was in April that I did actually try the longer fast for the first time. And I made it through, but it was difficult. I get a lot of symptoms. I'm not a good detoxer, which I now know, but at the time I had no idea. Like, I just thought, holy man, like, this is crazy.
So for people listening, they might not know what we're talking about. So both April and I, we take exogenous ketones and other supplements when we fast. And depending on your version of fasting, this may be like, this is an assisted fast, if we're going to go by the classic term of, just water fasting or dry fasting even. And this is where it kind of brings in many different ways to fast. Like, there's many different ways to skin the cat. There's not just a one size fits all for everybody. And I think that you and I, April, we're specifically talking more from like a woman's perspective. We have different hormones from men. So some of this will apply to men, but I find that women tend to have a little bit more, I don't want to say challenges, but can have more challenges with fasting, or find fasting more difficult. And there's a lot of research out there that talks about how women actually shouldn't be fasting. Just due to hormones, where they are in their cycle. A lot of women are chronically under eating already, like underfeeding, and they'll use fasting as like a form of punishment, like starvation, where fasting is really meant to give your digestive system a break so that the body is able to repair and regenerate any areas that need a little extra TLC. If we kind of look back at, our ancestors, not to say that this is like the optimal, our ancestors, cave people, were not living their best life, but they were a lot more fit than we were. They didn't have all of these medical interventions and that type of thing. So if we look at ancient man, it's estimated that they would probably only be eating once every 5 days, and then, or a couple times in that 5 days, but they would have a period of 4 or 5 days of rest, depending on how good your tribe was at hunting, right? If your tribe was good at hunting, then you were well fed, you were very robust, you were a very robust human, right? Because you're eating often. And ancient man typically ate a lot more of the like organ meats, brains, bone marrows, like all of these really, really high fat and nutrient dense meats, where we typically eat more muscle tissue, which doesn't have as much nutrient content in it. Anyways, so this can lead me down a whole rabbit hole of nutrient deficiencies, why we're poor detoxers. What was that?
I think in general, all of our food, the nutrient content is so low nowadays compared to our ancestors, right? Like it's just.
And our ancestors would be drinking from creeks, glaciers, very mineral rich water sources, where we're drinking filtered water or tap water, which has virtually very little minerals in there, and the jury's out of if tap water's got contaminants.
Lots of them.
Lots of them. Even if you live in a country that has like an amazing water treatment plant, we're still, ingesting people's birth controls, pharmaceuticals that they're excreting, like all the things, right? So anyways, back to fasting. There's many different ways to do it, and there's many different schools of thought on fasting and how it can maybe not be the best specifically for women and their health. But the reason why I rely so heavily on exogenous ketones or MCT during fasting is because it takes the guesswork out of it with people and their hormones. It's an assisted fast. You have a fuel source, the exogenous ketones. For those of you that maybe aren't sure what ketones are just an alternate fuel source to glucose. We run on many different fuel sources all at the same time. And so when we're ingesting exogenous ketones, we are getting a fuel source. So your blood sugar isn't going to plummet. You're not going to feel weak and pass out. Like a lot of people talk about, I passed out on my fast, or I just about did. Well, we don't really want to get there. So it's a fuel source, but it allows you to still achieve autophagy. And do you want to go over autophagy, April, or?
Well, no, I'll let you explain that. But what I do want to say is that that's one thing that I have learned a lot is about, by using the ketones and doing the assisted fast, our bodies are never able, they never get to that state where they think they're starving. And when we allow ourselves to get into that state where we think we're starving, our bodies are extremely smart. They're going to store fat. They're going to store energy. They're going to store everything because they're trying to not starve to death. Right. And so that's one of the beauties of an assisted fast. I mean, I do not think I could do an unassisted fast. I know me, and I just don't think I could do it. And but that's the beauty of it, is that your body is doing exactly what it needs to do. It doesn't think it's starving. And then, I've had great results, and I'm sure I'll let you explain autophagy, but it's amazing. And you just feel so good afterwards. And I never thought that was even possible.
So me neither. So autophagy is essentially the cellular cleaning. So of your system. Or self-eating. So the body goes into a state of autophagy after it is depleted of glycogen. So it'll burn through those glycogen stores. The average person has roughly 24 hours of glycogen stores. So this is energy stores, right? So when people are talking about, oh, you have to fuel before a workout, or you have 24 hours of stored fuel that you can utilize right now before we even get into fat burning. So our body is a machine. It's designed for survival, especially a woman's body, right? Like, we are designed to keep babies alive in times of famine. We are really good at storing fat. We are really good at storing energy. However, it's not so helpful now that we sit in front of a computer all day.
Yeah.
So autophagy is that self-cleaning, self-eating, and it happens in the system when we deplete ourselves of glycogen, and then we get into some fat burning. So having that time to rest from digestion allows the body to get into autophagy, to self-clean, to clean out all those damaged cells, DNA, that type of thing. So it's a really great disease prevention thing that your body just does on its own, but we have to give it time to rest from food. But most of us are so metabolically damaged, right? We talk about how we couldn't fast. Like, I couldn't go longer than 2 hours, 2 to 4 hours. Like, if it was 4 hours between feedings, like, I was gonna lose my shit. I was hangry, not good. Like, felt nauseous, sick to my stomach, couldn't make decisions. So blood sugar was an issue, and I was eating clean. Personal trainer, eating super clean, eating protein at each meal. Like, I always made sure I had meat cakes or jerky in my purse, because if there was only carbohydrates around, I wasn't going to make it. Like, it was for people who get hangry or have blood sugar issues, they get this. For people who don't, they're like, I just don't understand. But that essentially means that if we're so metabolically damaged, you talked about kind of going into that starvation mode, right? Well, for metabolically damaged or very insulin resistant, cellularly, we can't absorb the energy from the food that we're eating. So cellularly, we can essentially be starving. And so people are like, well, just eat less. Overweight people, just eat less. Well, it doesn't work that way. There's just so much more at play. And so fasting or just eating less doesn't work. And this is where that fasting might not be great for women. So if you're already under eating, you're already sleeping poorly. Now we're relying on coffee. So poor sleep, especially women who are in their like fertile years and they have babies like under 5, under 10. Sleep deprivation is real. It's real. So now we have somebody who's sleep deprived. So hormonally high cortisol, sleep deprived, under eating, under sleeping, not probably training that much. And then we're adding in coffee. So adrenals are just in the shitter. Anyways, I'm getting off on a tangent, but basically what I'm trying to say is fasting isn't available for everybody, because we need to deplete the glycogen in order to get into autophagy. And most of us can't even get through that. Can't get there.
And that's what I find. Like, I find for myself still, and I mean, I don't always do the longer fasts. I mean, I had not, because but I do routinely do the weekly metabolic 24 hours. But that,
sorry, April, 1 second. Just checking to make sure I'm okay.
Well, that's awesome. But I find the hardest point for me, and this is because of the detoxing, is that 24 to 36 hour mark is very difficult for me. Maybe even 22 hours, 20 to 22 hours. And, getting through that time period is exceedingly difficult for me. Like, if everything's going to go bad, that's when it's going to go bad.
Yeah. And then 24 hours is the roughest for most people because we have to get through those glycogen stores. And then typically people will find like hunger peaks the most, but if they're not metabolically flexible or fat adapted, that day two can be even rougher because especially if you're unassisted, because we're out of glycogen, but we're not metabolically flexible enough to be making ketones. Yeah, to be burning that fat and making ketones from our in our liver. Yeah, and so we're not metabolically flexible. So we don't have enough glucose for fuel and we don't have enough ketones for fuel. And it's a really rough phase unassisted to try and become more, insulin sensitive, to, become more metabolically flexible. It's rough. People experience some, like, this is where keto flu comes in for people who do the keto diet. They don't have enough glucose for fuel. They're not making enough ketones. So we can bypass this with exogenous ketones, which is really nice. And then the exogenous ketones also signal us to become more insulin sensitive. We're not muscle wasting. We're not stressing out the system as much. And then you and I we can talk about detoxing too, like with the fasting. Once you start burning fat, a lot of toxins are stored in fatty tissue. So we start burning fat, and now these toxins are circulating through our bloodstream. And it's not like this can be toxins from in our beauty products, from in the air, in our food, in our water. It could be pharmaceuticals. Most of us have had some form of pharmaceuticals. For myself, I had a hormonal IUD, and it was insane how hard fasting was as my body was detoxing that hormone. So I can maybe let you share a little bit of your experience with detoxing and kind of some things that you use to get you through or to support the detoxing process.
I've learned a lot because early on I just used the ketones and I never really understood the importance of the mineral side of things. And oh my God, I had massive headaches, and even with the ketones, and sometimes I would take 3 of them a day. Like I was trying so hard to get it over it, but I would get shaky, I would get weak, I would get lightheaded, I would get so nauseous and headaches, but I didn't understand the importance early on of the electrolytes and salt, because like most people, everybody's like, salt is bad, right? Like not understanding that there's different types of salt out there. And once I kind of clued into that, now I mean the most important, like I love it, I have salt rocks. So like the Himalayan pink salt, it's literally a rock, and I suck on it. And I do this the entire time I'm fasting. I use for myself, like I will use 2 to 3 electrolyte powders a day, and plus the salt. And it's still not easy for me to get through certain time periods during the fast. But the minerals have been massive. Like if I start getting a headache now, like I can just suck on a little bit of the rock, and I add in, I do use Mitoplex, but I think really which is the Prove It brand, but any electrolyte powder, I think, I'm assuming would be beneficial. Not going to the Gatorades and all that fake stuff, but a decent electrolyte powder. It's key. Like that's been massive for me. And even still, it doesn't make it. I still have detox issues, and some month, like I'm not so bad anymore on the 24 hours. Like I find my body's pretty used to the 24 hours now. But I still sometimes don't make it right till, let's say, 5 o'clock. But I've learned that's okay. Like I will sometimes, at 4 o'clock, when I'm starting to kind of really feel a little bit off. Usually that's the time period that I'm driving home from work. So I need to be kind of like, not feeling really crappy on my drive home. I will sometimes, make up a protein powder and use a little bit of that and drink it in my ketones, right? Like I'm not, because I still figure that's still, it's a rest from digestion. It's still not food. It's a different type of digestion. So I'm easy. I go easier on myself now. Like I know I don't beat myself up over, if I make it 20 hours, that's great. It's still 20 hours longer than, I would have been. I'm learning to be a lot easier on myself. I find we are very hard on ourselves as women. I think and a lot of people are all or nothing, right?
Yeah.
Like there's no give. And I think that's one thing I've learned a lot from you, Anndee, is that it's okay, right? Like it's okay to have a teaspoon of, MCT oil or the keto cream in the morning. It's okay to do a little bit of protein powder. Like you do the best you can do. And being okay with that. That's been a huge part of this journey for me. And so that's what I do now. Like the longer fasts, I'm going to have maybe a teaspoon of keto cream in my coffee in the morning, but I'm okay with that. Like I still get great results and I still am getting the rest. My
Yeah.
body is still getting what it needs. Right. And
Well, the MCT is going to convert, although, your pure fasters are going to be like, oh, it's a bastardization. But the MCT, like we use biohacking all the time in many different avenues of our life. So why wouldn't we biohack fasting or help the fasting process? Like if we can make it, we know we're getting benefits from it and we need to add in a little MCT, add in a little MCT. Like it's not wrong. MCT is great because it doesn't necessarily get broken down into fat for storage. It gets broken down into energy for fuel right away. And MCT also gets broken down into ketones. So some people have their differing thoughts on ketosis and the long-term effects of it, but we do know that utilizing ketones as your primary fuel source, the brain prefers it, the heart prefers it, and there's other tissues. We also know that ketones wire the fetus's brain in utero, and that we are in a state of nutritional ketosis as long as we're breastfed until we're put on sort of solid foods. Formula will kick babies out of ketosis, even though it does have high amounts of MCT in there, but breast milk has ketones and MCT as well. So we know that ketones are really, really great. If we look at our ancient man, our caveman, some people are like, whoa, we would be in ketosis all the time. And others say like ketosis is dangerous for long periods of time and maybe is not the most optimal state long term. But what's great about exogenous ketones or fasting is we just need to work on becoming metabolically flexible. Metabolically flexible is super key, super important for overall health. We can run on multiple fuel sources at the same time. We come out of the womb ketone burners. Then we train ourselves to become glucose burners. And then we're glucose burners, primarily glucose burners for a long period of time. And so becoming that metabolically flexible or fat adapted takes time for people. So why wouldn't we biohack or help ourselves out? We want to be uncomfortable. Like I think as a society, humans just like love comfort and we're comfortable all the time now. We don't know what it's like to be uncomfortable. And in the uncomfortable zone is where we experience the most growth, where we have the most awareness, where we really see what we're capable of, what our body is capable of, specifically with fasting. And this is going to lead me into, like we talked about the mental part of it, where I like to have this flexibility piece with fasting. I like to have flexibility and fluidity like within my whole life because I don't think it's black and white, especially as women. We are in 4 different phases, 4 different seasons within our cycle, right? Maybe after menopause, we will still go through cycles in our hormones. So why is it that we think we should be eating one way through the entire month? I see women who come to me and they're like, well, I need help with my diet. It's just not working anymore. It's because I'm getting old. Your metabolism just slows down when you get older. Yes, there is some truth in that, but they've been eating the exact same way for 25 years. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, you were in your fertile years, then you had babies, and now, yes, we're older, metabolism is slowing down, but like, why would you eat the exact same way? We are different humans throughout the
Yeah.
entire month. Like, I don't want to say
I
different
agree.
humans, but you know what I mean, hormonally, right? We're different. Why
Yeah.
would we expect to eat the same through a whole month? So the fasting is really great because it allows us to connect, where are we in our cycle? Where are we hormonally? Where are we with our sleep? Where are we with our emotional intelligence? Where are we with
Yeah.
our mental state? And the fasting, we want to get to that uncomfortable spot, but we don't want to push. This is where it's different for each person,
Well, you
right?
don't
And
care
why
about
we,
crash, right? Like you
what's
don't want to
that?
crash. You don't want to crash. Like that's what you want, to be uncomfortable, but you don't want to be sick, right? Like
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah. How much stress? Like, we want to stress the system, but we don't want to stress it too much. And if we're already in that stress state of, caloric deficit, sleep deprived, adrenal issues with all the coffee and caffeine and poor diet, why would we add on a bunch of additional stress when we could maybe just stress a little and do good? Like with weight training, if you have sore muscles for 5 days after, you did too much. If you have sore muscles for like a couple days after, good. We need to like break down that tissue in order to build it up. And it's the same with most things. So what's come up for you, or what's the biggest takeaways with mentally, things that you've come up against, and how do you deal with them?
Well, it's funny because I was at work one day, and this was back in the spring. It is, and at the hospital we had we had a library, and they used to post book covers outside of the library. And one of them one day just completely caught my attention. And I remember taking a picture of it, and I did do a post about it, but it was like it wasn't to do with fasting because it was a children's book, but it was called is this heart hunger, head hunger, stomach hunger? Like it was talking about eating but basically emotions, right? Like where is this hunger actually coming from? Because what I've found is most of the time it's not actually stomach hunger, like, right? It's emotional, it's just our heads. It's fasting is such a mind game. Like, and that's what I've discovered. Like I swear, like some days I can make myself sick because you can't stop thinking about it, right? It's like ruminating. So I have found, like for me, and at the beginning, I remember when, you guys were saying, distract yourself. Like it's easier to fast at work. I was like, there's no way I could fast at work. Like I'm going to die. So like, I'll never make it through the day. Right. But I did learn, getting out, going, and at early days, I would never have exercised when I was fasting because I might, completely pass out or something. Like I was totally like, I was like, thought the worst of the worst was going to happen to me. And now, I know, like, I'll go out and I'll exercise. I'll go for a walk. I will go, like, I'll do whatever. Like, I'll go get groceries. I'll just do my thing, right? Like, I go to work, and it's just, I treat it like any other day. But at the beginning, like it was getting over that sense of like, I have to preserve my energy. I have to like, because, stop myself from getting weak by doing nothing. Well, then when you do nothing, you got nothing else to think about except the fact that you're not eating, right? Because it really is
how uncomfortable you are.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, it's funny now, I'm like, okay, like I'll go for a walk 2 or 3 times a day if I'm fasting, because I know it's beneficial now. I'm not afraid of it anymore. I spent a lot of time being afraid of what might happen. Like, and it didn't necessarily mean it was going to happen. I was just worrying about it, that they might. But that was the mental side of it. And, like sometimes it's hard, like when it's an emotional eating, that's a hard one to overcome. I mean, and that's when sometimes it's not a good time to fast, right? Like, sometimes it's just not going to work, and that's okay. Like you have to be, in a sense, you have to be ready for it and in the right frame of mind.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you're, like if you've got a whole whack of stress going on, or you're under major emotional stress or anything, it's going to be really difficult. And that's okay. Like that's just part of the cycles, right? And knowing yourself too. But it's been a journey for me to know the difference between all the different types of hunger and why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, right? We're not used to always being introspective and looking at that.
And I think as a society and women, I mean, men do this as well, but we just push through, right? We have shit to do. We
Yeah.
just push through. And I think that the intuition that we have with our bodies gets suppressed at a very young age, right? Especially when it comes to food, and how our bodies operate. And I like to look at fasting or use fasting as a tool to tap into that intuition, to learn to listen to your body a little bit more, right? So like when I started, I couldn't go more than 2 to 4 hours without feeding. Once I added in ketones, I could go longer, right? And then I could go a little bit longer. So I built up probably over 6 or 8 months, I built up to 18 hours. I accidentally fasted for 18 hours. And that was a huge deal. That was like, I had freedom from food. And then as I've gotten a little bit further in my fasting journey, like things come up for you, even in the beginning of that fasting journey. Is this emotional? Is this fear programming? Is this blood sugar? Is this that I'm a poor detoxer? And so it really makes you sit down and look. So I like to journal while I'm fasting, because then I have data points. I can just look and say like, oh, I had some herxing, like I definitely had some detox issues on this one. I didn't add in enough electrolytes, or maybe I can add in some activated charcoal or something in the future. But for me, what comes up is I find it shocking the amount of where I'm looking for food for comfort.
Yep.
And so I'll find myself in the pantry and I'm like,
like, why am I here?
I'm not actually hungry, but I'm feeling like I need comfort of some sort. And so then I'll sit down, like, then I'm mad. Like, then I'm mad and realize, like, I fucking need comfort. Why do I need comfort right now? Then I like have to sit down and look at, okay, why am I needing comfort? What needs are not being met emotionally, or what boundaries have I not been firm with? And so it just takes practice. Like people think, I'm going to do this 5-day fast and I'm going to lose all this weight and everything's amazing. And we do lose weight. We do lose inflammation, and fasting is an amazing tool for fat loss. I think that for fat loss, fasting can be huge.
Oh, it's a game changer.
To not use it as a punishment. It needs to be used as a tool to help us grow as humans, personally, physically, mentally, spiritually, all these things. When it's used as a punishment, that's completely different. The body knows.
You're in a totally different mind space if that's why you're doing it, right? Like, so. Yeah.
And I get that question a lot. Like, well, what's the difference between starving myself and fasting? And I'm like, 100% intention. Like, if we're using food or not providing food as a punishment versus a medicine or a teacher or a tool, then we have a different, totally different thing. So if you are struggling or have a negative relationship with food, depending on you, sometimes fasting can be helpful in creating a better relationship with food and having a better relationship with your body. But if you are struggling with, disordered eating or anything like that, then now's not the time. You need to be working on some different things, right? Like it's not an all or nothing, a black and white, like you said. I use. Go ahead. Sorry.
I said it's important to realize that it really isn't all or nothing. Like and I just wish that everybody could see that, right? And be okay with whatever you can do. Like that to me is something that I've learned with this whole journey, right? And that's the most important part.
Well, fasting is like a tool, like those reps in the gym, right? We can, if you're doing it often or you're doing it regularly, like some people will do a longer fast, like a 72-hour fast quarterly. Some people will do it monthly. Some people will do it like twice a year. If we're using it as a tool, there's many different ways. Like we can do 4 shorter fasts. So 4 24-hour fasts in a month will accumulate to the benefits of one 60 or 72-hour fast. Some people will benefit from going a little bit longer than 60 or 70 hours based on where they are at. Some people will actually get more benefits doing a shorter 24-hour or 36-hour. It just really depends on the state that your body's in, what's going on. And this is where that awareness piece comes in, the journaling. Challenge yourself, like be uncomfortable, but not necessarily punishing yourself or pushing yourself to that point where I have to do this. Now, maybe if you have cancer or whatever and your life depends on it, then maybe that's where we, need to go into an extremely, extreme sort of mindset. But for the average person, we need to just be working with the body, not stressing it too much, but stressing it enough, being supportive and kind to ourselves, working through that emotional shit as it comes up. And it's interesting when you're fasting, all the like food programming. Like, have you seen commercials when you're fasting? I'm like, oh my God, salivating. This is totally designed to have you go buy it. So yeah.
Well, yeah, I remember early on too, like I'd be like, because there's 3 other people that live in my house that aren't fasting. And, it'd be like, I'm not cooking, I'm not doing anything, like, you guys need to eat out of the house. And like, now I'm just like, yeah, okay. Right. Like, but it was really, that is also a huge barrier for people, right? Because not everybody has like full support of whoever's living with them.
Yeah.
But most people probably don't have everybody in their house fasting with them, right? So it's another difficult part of it, is learning. But again, that's the mental side of it, and it really does help teach you. And you just do the best you can do, and you learn from all of it. Like that's the part that I'm very thankful now for fasting, because it's taught me probably more than anything else has. Because I've learned, and just the concept of eat when you're hungry, don't eat when you're not, right? It's learning what it means when you're hungry, like that, is it actual hunger? Yes. So, okay, eat. And it's liberating, right? It's such a freeing feeling to just not be a slave to, like, today I haven't eaten yet. I'm okay. I've had my, keto cream, and this is what I do now, and I found now I can go till noon easily. Whereas, when I think back to getting to 7 a.m. was such a huge deal, right? It's such a process, but you're always moving forward with it. It's really is a beautiful journey, right? When you get into that, when you actually embrace the fasting and do the insightful work and looking at all of it. And, it really is interesting. Like I find it fascinating.
Well, a lot of people will, we kind of talked about the assisted fast or unassisted fast, but people will say like, well, it's a few different arguments. The hardcore fasters will say, well, you don't need anything. You just need to teach your body to like rely on itself. Yes and no. I personally think that you should use electrolytes. There's like a snake juice where you can make your own electrolytes. It tastes like shit though. Or you can buy electrolytes. The one thing that I will say with electrolytes, if you're buying them, most electrolytes have carbohydrates in them, have sugar in them. We just really want the like mineral and salt content. We don't want the carbohydrates when we're fasting, because then that's a shot of glucose, right? And then that slows down the metabolic flexibility. Then you have to burn through that glucose to get to the ketones. And So watch for that, watch for carb content. And the mitoplex that you mentioned is one of the only electrolytes that I know of that are creatine based. Now,
Yeah.
creatine will help allow the electrolytes or the hydration into the cell much faster. So you'll get hydrated much faster. And it's also something that the mitochondria really likes. So it allows the mitochondria to be healthier. So that's something that's really good
I,
about the mitoplex.
I have definitely noticed a massive difference in my ability to when I added in the mitoplex, like night and day. Like, and when I stopped being afraid of using more and daily, I might only use half a package, and I might not even use it every day on my normal, but when I'm fasting, I'm 2 or 3 packages during the day. Like, I just don't even think about it anymore. I do it. And that's, I think, it's made a massive difference
Yeah.
for my success, right?
And then we have people who are like, well, if you're fasting, you're not getting the nutrients you need daily, which is like kind of fair. You're not.
Yeah.
But if you have extra body fat on you, toxins get stored in fat, nutrients get stored in fat. We have fat soluble vitamins. And so as you start burning fat, you're actually living on all of the nutrients you've already consumed. Now, most of us consume shit nutrients or
Yeah.
anti-nutrients. So our toxic load is going to be much higher than, say, ancient man. Where ancient man, when they were eating those organ meats, they were eating those bones, like the bone marrows. Later on, then people were making bone broths. Like there was lots of things that they were doing. They were consuming all of these nutrients from the animal because organ meats are super high in nutrients, super high in minerals and vitamins. Bones, bone marrow, all of these things are way more nutrient dense than just muscle tissue that we typically eat, like steak, chicken breast, that type of thing. There's not as much nutrients in there. We're not getting the water quality. We're not getting this, we don't have the soil quality for that we're growing things in. So we are nutrient deficient. We are nutrient deficient, mineral deficient on the regular as a society now. And so this is where that electrolyte piece is huge. Maybe ancient man had no problem fasting for 5 days, but they were topped up on the good nutrients. They were getting quality minerals from their water sources. We are not getting those. So adding in those electrolytes or those minerals, or lots of times I know that, especially when I have to detox, or like when I was detoxing from my hormonal IUD, I used desiccated liver capsules. So I used organ meats while I was fasting. Who knows what exactly that did as far as autophagy goes, but I do know that those vitamins and minerals helped support me. I was taking them with electrolytes. I was able to fast a little bit longer, feel a little bit better. Now, the thing that I think a lot of people don't talk about is, like, after fasting, we're able to absorb more nutrients from the food. So if you're only eating, if you're eating calorie restricted, say you're eating 1,000 calories, you're actually able to absorb more nutrients from those 1,000 calories than you could prior to the fast. So yeah, like there's just so many benefits. And I kind of got on a tangent there, but other than electrolytes and salts, what do you use to support some of your fasts?
I basically use the ketones and the mitoplex, and I always have my rocks, the salt rocks. And I put, and I've got just like Himalayan pink salt here as well. And water, and another big piece is water. And that's a big one for me. I'm not a water drinker. I've never enjoyed just drinking water. And but it really does help. Like that's one thing I have learned in my journey with fasting, is that I need to drink more when I'm fasting of just water. I tend to throw the mitoplex in the water. I tend to throw the ketones in the water, right? Because I'm just not a water person. But I've also used a lot of the different techniques, for distraction. Like, when I'm feeling really, really hungry, and I don't understand why, but the brushing your teeth thing does seem to work. It does something, like when I'm in that state where I'm like, okay, I'm starting to get kind of hungry. I'm getting kind of antsy, restless, brush your teeth. And whatever it does seem to help a little bit, the exercise, getting outside, heat pads. I tend to use a lot of heat on my stomach, in the evenings, especially when I'm starting to kind of get hungry, and it just distracts me. I think it's all distraction, really. I'm not sure what innate benefits I'm getting from any of that, except that it's just it's part of the mental game.
Yeah. Well, I would like to add with the heat and stuff, and it was something that we didn't really talk about. We mentioned like poor detoxing. We need to support those drainage pathways in order to detox. You're in autophagy, you're in that
Yeah.
self-eating, you're in that self-cleaning. We need to eliminate those toxins and eliminate that. So we need to support those pathways. Heat, like sauna, is what? So
Yeah.
heat pad on your tummy, perfect. But sauna is a great way to help flush out those toxins. You're going to sweat out stuff. Water, like getting adequate amount of water to flush it out. Exercise, vibration plate, stretching, massage therapy, cupping. These are all things that we can do to help those drainage pathways. So if you are struggling with fasting and it feels like more of a detox or a physical issue, like you're getting nauseous, you're getting those headaches, you're just generally feeling like shite, it can be the metabolic flexibility isn't there, but it can also be that your pathways are just blocked. And so you kind of have this little bit of toxic overload. So support yourself. Ancient man would be walking, moving all day. That helps that lymphatic system flush things through. Their fascia would most likely be not as restricted as ours based on how much we sit on the regular. They're probably not getting massage, but guaranteed ancient man took advantage of hot springs and cold dips.
Yeah.
So cold dipping combined with that sauna or that heat therapy can be super helpful for that detoxing process too. So cold showers, cold dip. I know it's not something that most of us really like. Oh, and breath work. Our lungs are huge for detoxing. So you can actually detox, like every time you exhale, you are detoxing somewhat. So if you're working on some breath work, that can help with the mental, emotional side of things, but it can also help with that physical. So
the other things that I
go ahead,
do,
sorry.
I will sometimes, depends too, I will go have a hot shower and I'll put some I'll put some salts in the shower, and just like I will do that. I did that actually in October when I did the reboot for the first time in many months, and it did help a lot. Like, in that period of time for me, right, 4 to 7 o'clock is kind of the bewitching hour. And that helped a lot. I've went in the hot tub before, but I did find the shower actually worked a bit better, because I could add the Epsom salts in, and it did help kind of get me through that difficult few hours.
I'm a bather when I'm on that. I don't have a hot tub, and I don't have a sauna, unfortunately, at my house. And so while I'm fasting, like super hot, very, very salty baths are kind of my my go-to. And the Epsom salts, or the salt in the water, you're going to transdermally, so through the skin, absorb some of those minerals as well, which can be really, really helpful in the process, especially if your GI system is a bit leaky or whatever. You can just absorb what you need.
This fast was the first time I had tried doing that, like as a routine sort of thing. So because it was a 3-day fast, the 60-hour, I did it on like in the afternoon on the first day and the second day. And it's interesting because I normally, like, have a lot of GI issues when I'm during the fast, but definitely when I come out of the fast. Like I can't get away from the bathroom. Like it's just not happening. I could not leave the house for a few hours. Like it just is not possible. But this time, which was interesting to me, and I mean, I haven't done a 60-hour fast since April, May. I can't remember. And I crashed huge. So whatever month it was, I didn't make it past, I crashed like big time. And, but it was a lot better this time. And I mean, yes, I've been very consistent with my 24-hour fast. So I had more of that under my belt, but I don't know if that was part of what helped me, because I did have a little bit of diarrhea for sure the morning I broke the fast, but it was nothing like all the other fasts that I had tried previous in the year. Like so I don't know. I really think
I tend to know,
time.
I tend to know physically if I really, really needed the fast based on how quickly my bowels start cleansing. Like
Oh,
the
okay.
first time I did longer, the first time I did a longer fast, or I attempted to do a 60-hour fast, I only made it 28 hours.
Yeah.
And I was experiencing cleansing
Oh yeah.
at 18 hours. And it was like water. My husband talks about like his first poop on his fast, the first time he fasted, he was like, it was weird. There was stuff coming out of me that like shouldn't have been in me. But like ever since he had that initial weird poop, he's like, we're good. Like that doesn't happen again. So yeah, each person's different, but I find based on where your inflammation is at.
Each person is different, but each fast is different. Like it really is, like, and that's, considering like I actually expected that this might be quite a difficult fast for me, just because I was still in post-surgery, like I was still in recovery, and I wasn't really sure how much that would have played into the whole thing, but it actually, digestive wise, it was better. Like it was probably the best fast I've ever had as far as diarrhea, and throughout I was fine, which was interesting to me because previous to this one, they've all been extremely difficult, during and coming out of the fast. And this one wasn't. It was still difficult for me as far as like, I got very nauseous. I got very like the headaches, and getting through the evening hours were very difficult as far as feeling off and just kind of, but the GI stuff was better, which was interesting. It just was interesting to me because I expected a lot more issues because of the surgery.
So just for people who are listening who maybe never fasted before, if you're doing an assisted fast with electrolytes and exogenous ketones, you're doing like a kit, essentially like our 60-hour reboot kit, which is ketones, bone broth, electrolytes, and then we have a keto protein powder that you break your fast with. We also have some DNA repair in the kit. When you're using the kit, if you shouldn't be getting crazy headaches or crazy body aches unless you are starting to detox, and you're just detoxing too fast, right, for your body to handle it. But that keto flu and kind of the initial things that people talk about when starting to fast or just with a water fast, you won't experience that because you have fuel source. But this is where we have that awareness of like, okay, this isn't keto flu. This isn't me not having enough glucose or having enough ketones. This is me detoxing. So we're able to have that awareness versus if you're just doing it with water or bone broth or kind of on your own unassisted, specifically without ketones, and you're not metabolically flexible, there is a lot more guesswork in there, right? Is it just that we're detoxing? Is it that we don't have that fuel source? Is it that, there's a plethora of things, but with the kit and assisted with ketones, we take a lot of the guesswork out. So we're able to dive into like, is this emotional? Is this detoxing? Is this? What is the next course of action? What can we add in, or should we stop our fast for now and then maybe try again next month or in 3 months, or try a 24 hours? So the kit, I think, is really important for people who are nervous about fasting, who
Yeah.
are insulin resistant. We have a 24 fast kit, and we also have a 60-hour reboot kit. Both are really good. Company-wise, we do a 24-hour fast every week, and then once a month we do the 60-hour reboot. And we do it that way because 24-hour fasting is much more accessible to people starting. It's not as stressful on the system. But accumulatively, if we do that, 4 weeks in a row, we are going to get the same benefits overall health-wise as we would with a 60-hour fast. So you can fast in many different ways. Like there's a protein sparing modified fast diet, which you're just eating meat. There's like an egg fast. There's I'm working on one, I can't remember the name right now, but you start at 55% the first day. So it's 5 days. First day is 55% of your caloric intake you consume. Then the last 4 days are 35% of your caloric intake. And so like that's a version of a fast. You can get into autophagy with it. So I'm playing around with it. So there's not necessarily a right or wrong way. I think too, where you are hormonally. And I think what you said as far as each fast is different is a perfect example of we are different human beings throughout the month. Cellularly, we are different all the time. So why do we think doing the exact same thing every day is going to be beneficial? Like the body is meant to deal with change. So that's my 2 cents, but we should probably wrap it up here right away. We're pushing an hour. Is there anything that you think that people should know? Final tips?
Just be easy on yourself. That to me is, it's okay, whatever you can do. If it's an hour longer than you would normally go, it's still, you're moving forward, and just allow yourself the flexibility to be okay with whatever your body, whatever is happening in your life at that particular day. If it doesn't work that day, tomorrow's a new day. Just keep trying. I think that's the key for me. Like, it is just keep trying. Every little bit counts. It really, really does. You'll be surprised. It all adds up.
So I'm going to add in the show notes your link for your reboot kits and your 24 fast kits. I also carry them as well, but I'm going to link yours in here because you brought so much value. And honestly, you are an amazing support person for people learning to fast who are uncomfortable with it. You're so supportive in that process. So I'll link your stuff below. Where is the best way for people to get a hold of you if they want to reach out?
Normally Messenger, is probably the easiest way. Just find me on Facebook. It's April Wargati Doyle on Facebook. So we can also put that maybe in the just send me a message on Messenger, and I am always glad to, help anybody. It really is, it's a journey. And, it's having the support. I'm not sure I could have got to where I got. I know I couldn't have got where I got to without the support of, people like Anndee. And, there's so many. You just need to know that it's going to be okay. Right. And you're not alone. Like that is key.
Well, and between the two of us, we have so many resources, right? Between Facebook groups, between our personal groups, between, carnivore, like all sorts of different resources that we can send you as well. So there's never just one way. I just really want to hammer that in.
No, it definitely isn't a one size fits all, like that you can do this no matter what. That's the beauty. I will say that is the beauty of ketones, is that you can do it with whatever, I hate even calling it diets. They're not diets, but if whatever eating plan you choose to follow, right, you can just add them in. And that's the beauty of it. It's not a diet. It's not a specific program, right? Like it works in anybody's lifestyle, right?
It's a fuel source. Anybody can use it. It's safe for anybody to use because we naturally make them, right? So yeah, you can eat any which way, vegan, carnivore, keto, Western
Paleo.
diet. You can eat the McDonald's diet and still
Yeah,
drink
you really
ketones and
can.
get some
I,
benefits.
one of my children does that.
Teenagers.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, well, thank you so much for your time. I'll link your Facebook below. I'll link your
Awesome.
reboot kits and your 24 fast kits below. And I'll link any other info that people need to get a hold of you. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Anytime. I always enjoy chatting. Have a great day. Thanks, everybody.
You too. Thanks.